Welcome to the class on democracy. Today we'll try to see the latest development in the thinking about democracy. In the 20th century, and to be more specific, in the second half of the 20th century, a number of critics of democracy have come to light, and they are all stressing on different points on which they think the liberal or liberal democratic ideology has failed, or the shortcomings they have noticed. We start with a variety of schools who calls themselves School of Deliberative Democracy. At least two names, David Miller and Joshua Cohen. There are maybe more, but these are two main figures who argue that people's preferences are reflected in their deliberations, and the virile conditions of a democratic functioning is marked by the quality of deliberations. If a democracy is run without any deliberate reasoning process, democracy has no utility. They are very clear that there will be elections, there will be new parliaments, there will be new laws, everybody knows. But how to ensure that democracy is lively? How to ensure that people understand the reasons? People use reasons to make their ideal democracy or the democracy they prefer. Now, their main argument is that this articulated form of deliberation is an a priori conditions of democratic process. On some other occasions, I might have said that elections is no reliable criterion of democracy. Election is just a process for checking the state of public opinion from time to time. But the real democratic process is alive only when people deliberate among themselves. A very important figure in this debate in 20th century is the German social political philosopher Habermas. He has talked about on this at great length, and he thinks that every democracy must have an ideal speech situation, within quote unquote speech situation, in which free and equal participants will take part in the process of communicating with one another without the constraints of power and privilege. That is, not necessarily backed by powerful groups, not necessarily enjoying certain special privileges, but by sheer intellectuals or sheer citizens, informed citizens. They must take note of what is going on, and they will deliberate among themselves in order to contribute to the enrichment of the process of democratic decision making. That is the summum bonum of what is called the deliberative democracy concept. Comes along with it a very towards some sort of a cognate concept, participatory democracy, which we casually referred earlier. Now this is, I give one name, Benjamin Barber. He underlines the point that democratic governance gains in real meaning only when people enjoy the power of participatory democracy. That is, they must participate in the process of decision making as such. Now how can they do? Because there Benjamin Barber's argument is that by self-legislation, not legislation by a representative body called parliament. Even with individuals, we legislate for ourselves. So the self-legislation, what is the utility? this self-regulation or self-legislations transforms a private individual into a free citizen. The entity X is a private individual, but the moment he participates in decision making for himself or his group, then he becomes a real citizen.
So, sir, is it an extension of deliberative democracy?
No, not that. It's a complete another way of looking at things, another way of looking at the reality called democracy. That is, there are two capacities. One, I am an individual, private individual. I have my private interests, etc. Only when I participate, gain in experience, then when I contribute of reactions, then I am functioning as a citizen. That is, civic role is there. Only self is not the whole. So self and the citizen, this conceptual difference, this is the one important point it comes here. And direct participation, of course, if it is possible, well and good. There are certain reasons. For example, it increases the people cooperation. The moment, even among the students, you see that they are very eager that we must also have some scope in participating in decision making, governing educational institution, etc., etc. So everywhere and every layer, the concerned interest might claim, and their claim is justified, that in order to discover what is their need, discovery of need is very important function. If even when we accept, for example, that authorities are quite good intentioned, but after all it is imposed. So real democracy will demand that let the concerned individual, concerned citizen ventilate, not decide as such, let them ventilate, they participate. It is not an extension as such, it is another way of looking at things, that only by ventilating your views, you are participating in the larger process of decision making. Not exactly what you want may be successful, but totality of all in citizens does something.
That you are making your voice heard.
Yes. For example, I can give one very recent example, Delhi gang rape case. Now, entire community concerned, and especially the young
generation,
they wanted to participate in decision making, what is to be done in this case. You don't get this example in a textbook, but this is the real thing that we want citizens as citizens. Nobody wants any mercy from the authority. Nobody cares for the political parties or the ministers or the president or prime minister. This is my problem, and so this is my study of the problem. This is my suggestion for remedying. So in this way, this is another new thing. So participatory democracy is a very novel in that sense, the point of view. But there may be, only one danger is that there may be parochial views. What appears to be spontaneous may be, after some time it will be discovered that some group behind it. And the third alternative critic, we are just taking note of alternative critics. The third one was very popular in the 1960s. That is what is called New Left.
New Left.
Capital N, capital L. New Left. Not the traditional left, not the traditional Marxism. Not this kind of thing. New Left, they call themselves new. That is, there are at least two names are quite important, Poulanjas and Herbert Marcuse. The democratic theory of state and freedom of the individual. And their argument is this, that free and equal individual is, in fact, this assumption is not correct. Whole liberal theory rests on the assumptions that people are free. But they say no, they are not free. They are not free because of the economic circumstances in which they live, because of the social conditions in which they live. So, real inequality of everyday life, not formal, not paper, nothing legal, but everyday life, individuals suffer from some inequality. So new left, they want that free and equal. Underline both these, free role and equal role of the individual. There is also, they are criticizing the typical socialist policies, I mean of Lenin and others. They are also criticizing them, not only bourgeois, liberal, but also the typical traditional left, they are also being criticized by them. Hence this adjective new.
But on what ground are they criticizing?
No, these are the grounds I am giving. These are the grounds that the emphasis on equality, emphasis on free role, then Marxism to be analyzed in a new perspective, because after all what Marx wrote and Engels wrote, that was all in the 19th century. So what about the new post-industrial societies? What is the conditions? Or whether that all things are equally applicable or not. So they want a new assessment. So they call themselves new left. And at least two major point of view. One is that feminist aspect. They are not feminist as such, but they recognize that that is another new way of looking at things. An ecological aspect. That ecology is important, that climate change is a serious concern for the society. So even in economic theory they challenge these things, that growth. What growth does this mean? You destroy the ecology, you destroy the climate, you destroy everything, the natural things, and then you say that we are increasing in growth. The growth is just a capitalist concept. Growth always group, not the growth of universally. So this is the very radical way of looking at things. But only criticism that has been done against the new left approach is that okay, their criticism is quite good, the demolition is quite good, but what is their own suggestion, what is their own way of building up, we don't find much of it in new left criticism.
They didn't put forth the model of themselves.
Not much. They are expert in demolition, but not in construction. Now, new left came first in the 60s. From late 70s emerged its answer or response, and they called themselves new right.
New right.
New right critic. Now again, new right of the 1970s and 1980s is not that new in that sense, because its origin was in the 1930s. In the 1930s, there was worldwide depression. That is, less of employment, less of income, less of things. So prices going down. So everything, depression. Unlike the modern depression that we are having, the difference is that there everything was going down. So Keynesian economics said that put money deliberately into the economy so that the whole system can be recovered. But our present depression is something different. So prices are rising. And at the employment is going down. So it's a peculiar thing. Anyway, so new right philosophy, they suspected that welfare state to start with. Welfare state, this philosophy believes in public spending. So government decides on policy, government takes a project, crores and crores of monetary investment is done, and they hope it will turn up. But how it will be done? They raise first Hayek, Friedrich von Hayek, very important thinker of 1930 onwards. He said the real culprit is this attitude, political attitude, that whole thing will be done by the state. But what is state? State is after all bureaucracy. So more you take more and more welfare schemes, you strengthen the bureaucracy more and more. And if bureaucracy is immensely powerful, then the freedom of the individual is threatened. So that is his first major point or major revolt, so to say. And it is same person, same philosopher who in the 1960s continues this thinking, and he wrote a book called the constitution of liberty, how liberty is organized. And his argument was that this more and more bureaucratization of the development process, this is bad for democracy, this is because this is bad for individualism and freedom. Okay? So this emphasis is new right emphasis. But very recent time, the Hayek is from 1930, 40, 50, is going on. But in recent times we find one name, economics, and one name in philosophy. In economics it is Friedman, and in philosophy it is Nozick, Robert Nozick. So they are also in their own way, on their different arguments, not copying Hayek as such, but coming to the same point that individuals' existence is at stake because of encroachment by the state. So they asserted that individuals' freedom must be ensured first. What authority has got the state to suggest that to the individual that you must develop yourself in this pattern, this education, this culture, this who told you, who gave authorized you? It is in a democracy, only the individual should decide. So this is one kind of protest. And their argument is ultimately political freedom is affected. And Milton Friedman, in the economics analysis, from point of view of economic sciences, he argued that the privatization is the best method of development. Because if the state comes with more money, more investment, that automatically will destroy individual's freedom. So we must give the pride of place to market. Market is the place to determine which is good for the society.
But then also there will be monopoly of only a selected few.
No. They believe in just the opposite. Complete competition.
Complete competition.
No monopoly.
But that would lead to some sort of monopoly of the powerful. Like those who are economically powerful will have their choice.
No. They said that okay, let the process be marketized. So let the market decide. If market decides that Mr. X, that in your language monopoly, is correct or is correct. But sometime another rival will come. So in this way, whatever the economy in the marketization process will go on, that will aid to the liberty, economic liberty of the individual.
It develop economy, sir.
Maybe or may not be. Or maybe a development, but there is a distorted development. Again, it depends on which point of view you take.
Yeah, definitely distorted development. Because
that is from your point of view, but try to be dispassionate. There is some academic point in it also. We are not taking sides now.
No.
We are not saying this is good, this is bad. We are just trying to differentiate and distinguish different alternative theoretical stands. What is there? Now in the 80s we come. Communitarian, a new term, communitarianism, or communitarian critique of liberal democracy. Now their target is liberalism of John Rawls, or liberal theory of John Rawls, because John Rawls became very famous in the 1970s. In fact, he rescued liberalism and gave a new interpretation to all these. But they are challenging Rawls, particularly McIntyre and Sandel. These are the two names. There is another, Charles Taylor. There are so many people, but still these are the most important thing. Their argument is that, you see, look at the title, communitarian, that is from community, the term communitarian, then noun communitarianism. Their argument is, which is prior, individual or community? They say that individual is the product of the community. No individual is self-born mature, isn't it?
Exactly.
So everybody is born in a family or in a neighborhood or in the cultural context, economic context. So it is the community as a whole which shapes individual's personality, his way of looking at things, his choice, his taste, his aspirations, everything is influenced by the community, and therefore community must have priority
Over
over
individual.
individuals. That's a new right. They demolish the new right and they demolish the moderate left also, welfare state, Rawlsian capitalism, welfareism, everything they say put stress on
Community.
community belonging, community interest, community point of view for individuals, directions or development. Charles Taylor is a typical philosopher and very famous but very tough philosopher in his sense. I am just trying to indicate what he is saying. His main argument is that every human being is a self-interpreting animal. Self-interpreting animal, and his rights and freedom exist only in a social context which influences his or her decision making. So he comes within the school, communitarian school, but he is a completely typical technical philosophical point of view. Now we come to a very familiar, fashionable thing, feminist critique. So again, it is not a very new thing. New recent decades it has been fashionable, but immediately after French Revolution, the demand was raised that females are not given sufficient freedom, their personality is not recognized as sui generis. So from that, then in between there is some gap. Then from 1960s, 70s, 90s, it goes on and goes on. Right now we have got three varieties basically. One is liberal feminist, one is socialist feminist, and the third one is radical feminist critique. So we understand liberal, very easy. We understand socialist in the sense that those who are convinced socialist, and at the same time from their point of view they say that women don't get sufficient freedom, empowerment, etc. But what is most important is radical socialist. Their argument is they straight away question the criterion of judging the standard of progress. They said everything done and everything thought has got a gender bias. So that bias has to be removed. They say the difference is the more important than we are all human beings, but not that. From the very ancient times, they say male and female are completely different. So this is radical feminism. And now I think the last one we can conclude by saying what I have called it generally the pragmatic engagement with democratic theory. Pragmatism. It is very latest in a sense that political scientists, after so long debate, you see, from ancient Greece to modern times, now they find that so many theoretical things have been done, but what about reality, pragmatic? There is a pragmatic engagement. Suppose group theory, polyarchy, this thing. Okay, check it with your ground level research. What does the research actually in a parish or a village or a town, does it tally with that theory or not? So this question, this way of looking at the things is the latest tendency. I do not say the only one, everything is going on, but there is one section of theorists, mostly concentrated in the United States. They have done tremendous work of always trying to compare what is the reality and whether the classical, neoclassical, feminist, this way or that way, which theory is tallying with it or not. So this is the way that institution, a theorist who begins from Schumpeterian arguments, right down you come to new left, new right, etc. So every time it has to be compared and reviewed in reference to pragmatic experience, real ground level experience. I can just give you a name, Arkor Phung. He has written a very wonderful article in American Political Science Review, August 2007, where he has clarified the stand of these democratic theories. Recent time, that is political decision making to reason through self-governing institutions run by equal citizens, whether it is taking place or not. That is to the criterion to be judged. Democracy. I think that though hurriedly, I accept it as hurriedly, but it brings in some focus, new focus to understand.
This age-old concept of democracy.
Concept of democracy, age-old concept and ever new, ever challenging, ever expanding. Okay.